told me, Sayyidina Sayyidina. So the talk that is assigned to me is about who is our real enemy. And in our talk today, I will be covering 3 points. The first one is about the fake enemy. And the second one will be about his devices, the enemy devices, and we are not ignorant of his devices. And the third one is about the sin of akrasia, or the lust of deceit. The first point is about what the fake enemy. In the praise by Miriam the prophetess that we repeat in the first host every night, she says the horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea. And I always was wondering, like, what she has to do anything with the horse. Who cares about the horse? It's about the rider. And one of the, I think the fathers, I don't recall his name, speak about that the horse is Pharaoh and all of the Egyptian soldiers. But the real enemy, the rider of the horse, was the enemy, the true enemy, that's the devil. It has been always the case. This is always the case. There are people who are tools, but the real enemy for all of us is the devil, the enemy of mankind. In the mind of many people, they have in their mind there's some kind of enemies. They create them, and they think this is their fight is with. And maybe they define their life as being miserable because of those enemies. But let us see first the idea about when we create a fake enemy and how life will look like and what is the real problem here. I'll give examples from the Bible about people who lived with animosity towards others, and they thought that the problem is in the other person. We imitate those people sometimes. One of them, for example, is Cain. When Cain's offering was rejected from God, in his mind, the enemy was Abel. And maybe in his mind, the enemy was God himself. His disappointment or whatever, his frustration, he thought that, okay, now my enemy, the person who makes me miserable, the person that every time I look at, he makes me feel that I'm not good enough, was Abel. In reality, this was not the enemy. In reality, was the enemy of his competitiveness. And now I have a person who reminds me of my shortcoming. In reality, this was the true enemy. The true enemy was residing in his heart. The string was his sense of inferiority and sense of like I'm failing. And the rider, or at that time actually the player on these strings were the devil himself. But he put and projected the animosity on his brother, and he thought that when I get rid of him, everything will be okay. He looked for the solution out of himself, and he created in his own mind an enemy that was not truly an enemy. This is something that's, again, similar. Sometimes we do the same. Someone maybe remind me of my shortcoming. A person that when I look at, I feel like I'm not good enough. Then I put on him some kind of like bad meanings, and he becomes the enemy, and I define that my peace and my joy comes from the disappearance of this person. Another example here also is Ahab. King Ahab, he had everything in his hand, but he started looking around and he found another vineyard close to his. And he went to the owner, Naboth, and he asked him, can you give it to me? So Naboth said, no, this is the heritage of my parents. I cannot give it to you. And we read this. Ahab went into his house, sullen and displeased, because of the word which Naboth the Jezreelite had spoken to him. For he had said, I will not give you the inheritance of my fathers. And he lay down on his bed and turned away his face and would not eat. A bad day for him. And he was so sad. And in his mind, the enemy was Naboth. He denied me the access to this place that would make me happy if I acquire it. Hypothetically, I believe if Naboth gave even the vineyard to Ahab, Ahab would still find something to be upset at. The real enemy was inside him, in his mind, in his greediness, looking for something to acquire. And when he was denied, then he made a fake enemy. The fake enemy was Naboth, and his wife, we know the rest of the story. She came, helped him, killed the man, got the field for him, etc. Again, Ahab here, as we say, had a fake enemy he created in his own mind. I always like, whenever I look at the verse that about loving our enemies, Maybe the first step to do this is not to create enemies virtually or in our own minds, thinking that this person is an enemy while truly he is not. Another example also is Esau. Esau wanted to kill Jacob, and in his mind, Jacob stole my birthright. But when we know the story from the beginning, Esau went out and he married one of the women of the Canaanite against his parents' approval. And he later on, he sold his birthright for a bowl of lentils. But later on, he comes and then accused his brother of being a thief and one who robbed him from the blessings, while actually he did not regard it in any way. The enemy was not outside of Esau. The enemy was Esau's attitude and his mindset and belittling the blessing that was given to him because of being the older brother. Another example is also Korah. You know this problem by Korah, Dathan, and Abiram when they came and complained against Moses, and they made like a motion, and they told him, they gathered together against Moses and Aaron and said to them, "You take too much upon yourselves, for all the congregation is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord?" They were complaining that why there should be only those like the family of Aaron being priests. Why not all of us? And now they had a conflict and a strife and a struggle with Moses and his brother. The true problem was not their devotion. The problem was not Moses and Aaron. The problem was them lusting for the priesthood. The priesthood is not something that people will fight for. Something assigned from God to this family in particular. And we know the rest of the story and how God punished them in a unique way because of them resisting God's ordinances. Another example also of a person who created a fake enemy was King Saul. Instead of using David and benefiting from his talent and his devotion and his loyalty to the king, he thought of him as an enemy. And he thought that this man is after me to take the kingdom to himself. And this only happened when he heard the women were praising him, giving him the thousand and giving David the myriads. Imagine that King Saul, from this point, when he started to be envious of David, everything moved 180 degrees. He has nothing to do now except to look for David and try to kill him. All of the affairs of the kingdom, taking care of the people, was put aside, and he is now have only one focus, to get David and kill him. This is what happened when you have a fake enemy. All of the resources are taken to somewhere where like you lose them. And from this point on, King Saul started his deterioration and fall until the miserable end that we notice at the end of the book of 1 Samuel. What happened here is also a person who created in his mind a fake enemy, and he went after him. Another example also is Haman. Haman in the book of Esther, he was the prime minister, the second man in the kingdom. And we hear about how the king gave Haman all authority. He can do whatever he wishes. He has everything in his hand. But one thing only that was not given to him, this for Mordecai to bow before him. When Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow or pay his homage, Haman was filled with wrath. Even you remember the day when he was invited to the banquet. He was the only person invited with the king. And he was so happy when he went back home, and he was telling that how this kind of honor was bestowed upon him alone. But when he was going back home and he saw Mordecai, and Mordecai again did not bow before him, he went his home and he was sorrowful and sad and angry. One person. Actually, this story of Haman sometimes reminds me when someone goes to the church and he have everything that's in this day going okay. Enjoy the people, enjoying the liturgy, attending, partaking of communion. And then he meets with one person who would give him a hard time. And then going back home, and then the whole church is summed up into the church today was not good. The people in the church are not good. I am not going to go back again here because one person treated him in a way that he did not like. And then the image of this fake enemy becomes like the image of the church or everybody in the church. I'm not going to go to this place again. I'm going to find for myself another place I would be feeling comfortable in. This is what happened when we create in our own minds a fake enemy, and we do not think of the rider of the horse. We are focused only on people who are, in a way, we think of them or they give us hard time. The last example here about the people who created fake enemies is the older brother. The older brother was upset when his lost brother came back home. He was angry, would not go in. Therefore, his father came out and pleaded with him. Why he was angry? Why he considered his brother as an enemy? Why he thought of him that he should not be given any kind of rights? Also, if we apply this on ourselves, when we come to the church, we all come because of God's mercy and partake of the Eucharist. Sometimes people, they come and start focusing about why this person is serving, why this person took communion today. And they come and ask Abuna, why did you grant him? And become the story about this person and why he was given some kind of blessing. Here, the whole idea is I go out of my own problem. I do not look for the enemy that's working inside me, and I look for someone who is outside. So the first thing that we have to agree on maybe is that the enemy is not outside of me. And the solution of my problems are not with others. We will talk about this further maybe in the presentation tonight. The second point in the presentation, we'll talk about some of the devices that the enemy is using. And as the Bible says, we are not ignorant of his devices, we are aware of it. We are aware, we learn it, and that's why we can have a better situation facing and avoiding them. I will speak about 7 of these devices that are very common, and they happen maybe with all of us. The first device, it's a common one, and it is a very dangerous one, is pushing victims to a state of alienation. We usually, as Christians, we belong to 5 entities. First of all, I belong to myself. Secondly, I belong to my God. I belong to my family. I belong to my church. And I belong to the reality that I live in. These 5 entities, wherever I am perfectly in, I am at home. When I belong to myself, when I belong to my God, to my church, to my family, to reality, then I am in a good place. The enemy will always try to push us away from this kind of belonging and get us alienated from all of these entities. So what will happen when we are pushed out and we are alienated from all of these 5 entities? Usually, 3 things happening when we are alienated. Number 1 is we lack understanding. Suddenly, we do not understand any of these 5 entities that supposedly we belong to. The second thing is, because I don't understand, I cannot belong. The third one is the sense of discomfort, unease. I am not in the right place. Remember the prodigal son. What happened with him is, first, he went out from his house as if like he does not understand his father. He is not happy with him. And away from his family. And even away from himself. The first step in his return was what? Repentance. Was he returned to himself. He started coming back from the status of alienation that he was pushed, and he unfortunately accepted to be away from all of these kind of entities. Speaking about these entities, number 1, being away from myself, being alienated from myself. The first thing is lacking understanding. I find myself, whenever I'm alienated from myself, in this situation, lacking the ability to understand my own feelings, my behavior, my choices. Doesn't this sound familiar? Sometimes say, I do not really understand why I'm doing this. I have no clue why did I make this kind of a choice. I don't understand the frame of mind that I was in when I did what I did. This means what? I was alienated. I was out. I was not myself. Another thing is also, again, look here when the Lord Christ spoke about this, about Jerusalem being alienated from itself, saying, if you had known even you, especially in this your day, the things that make for your peace. Jerusalem does not know it is good for its own peace. This applies on individuals, applies on communities, apply on nations as well. We don't have the time to speak about even the nation, the United States, when we live in, being in a state now of like started to be alienated from how it was founded, the Christian principles that this country was built on. Alienated from myself also will give me this sense of absence of belonging. I do not belong to myself. What is the manifestation? I act against my self-interest. I do actions and I make decisions that's truly harmful. And maybe I know this, maybe I do not know, but at the end of the day, if I belong to myself, I will not harm myself this way. And this, again, when you do something like this, knowing that what you are doing is wrong, then I'm alienated. I am not belonging to myself. And this, again, the last thing, whenever we experience this, the sense of discomfort and ease, there is a sense of distress and anxiety, emptiness, and loss of purpose. I am not comfortable in my own skin. I am not feeling peace with myself. This means if I have any of these, this means that I am alienated. I am away from myself. And when we speak tonight about the victory over the enemy, we'll speak about how to come back, how to return from this status. Being alienated from God and the church, how does it look like? Alienated from God means I do not understand His will, what He wants. Remember the Pharisees and the scribes? They were working day in and day out about the sacrifices and the teachings, but they were alienated from God and His will. They did not understand that He desired mercy. Everything they did was away from Him. As the Lord Christ spoke about the last day, when those people who were alienated will come and see Him, and they say, Lord, we prophesied in your name. We saw that. We know you, and we belong to you. But He will say to them, I never knew you. You were always strangers from me. You never understood whom I am, what I am after. As I spoke about the lost son and how he was alienated from his father's love, he felt maybe staying at home is something I do not want to do. I'm not comfortable. My father is not the best person I would like to keep living with to the end of my life. When it comes to the third entity that we become alienated and pushed away by the deception of the enemy is the church. Physically, being physical in the church does not mean that I belong to the church. How does this status of alienation look like? It shows in how sometimes people might lack understanding or appreciation for the doctrine of the church, or the sacraments, the rites, the practices, and wisdom. They are in the church to criticize the church, finding faults with the church, speaking about what is missing, what was not right. And if even everything is going okay, then why find there's still something? Why you do it this way? Why men are not sitting beside women, as if like this is the thing that really is going to make the church the good place that I would like to stay and I worship in? All of these questions, by the way, and all of this kind of critical spirit says that I am alienated from the church. I don't understand. I'm not appreciating. I do not belong here. Alienation also can be from the Orthodox spirituality altogether. The spirituality in the church is based on these two items, discipleship and the personal experience. You taste and see, and then you are a disciple of someone else. When a person is alienated from this, he does not know about this, then in the church in his mind is not fulfilling its duties. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. He does not want to be disciple or follow or obey. And whenever you speak about come and taste and see, they tell you have to convince me first. When you tell him you have to be a disciple, say you want to control me. I am alienated. I don't understand. I am out. I am physically in, but in my mind and heart, the enemy succeeded in pushing me away from the church. Being in the church with no understanding, no belonging, and a great sense of unease, as if like I am pushed every week to be in the church, me and my family. This is sometimes reflected in how parents talk with their kids at home. And they wonder later on when the kids, they come and they say, I do not want to go to the church. Who made this? Who made them to feel like they are aliens inside their church? Maybe the question will come back to the parents and how they talked, how they communicated to the children what is the church is about. The fourth entity that the enemy will try always to push us away from his family. The older son in the parable of the prodigal son was also alienated from his family. He was inside. Maybe the younger one, we know that he lived, but the older one, he was inside and he was serving his father, but he was alienated from the family. He did not really care. I was there, but I didn't care. I do not belong to the family. This can happen also whenever we are pushed by the enemy to be alienated from our own families. I am there, maybe I am a father, or I am maybe the older brother, or whatever, but at the end of the day, I don't belong to the family. I do not belong because I don't embrace the values. I do not have the principles of this family. I don't have even the best interests of the family in my mind. It's all maybe about me. Maybe this is where I belong, and I'm alienated from my own family. It's a sad situation, but it's very common, where you find people saying that we do not see the father. He is not there. He is not engaged. He's not involved. Whenever he comes from work, he goes to his computer and he locks himself inside his room and say that I am tired. I did what I'm supposed to do. No one should talk with me anymore. This is selfishness, is also a manifestation of being alienated from the family. The fifth entity where the enemy will try to push us away from is to be alienated from reality. Reality is not the truth, by the way. The truth is what God defined as this is true. But sometimes we have our own reality. I live in a reality, but my perception of it is so different. Like, for example, I'm not understanding the life I live in. Even reality says, whatever you sow, you will reap. It's a rule with no exception whatsoever. But me, I have another reality. I'm not sowing, I'm not caring. But at the time of the harvest, I'm expecting to reap something different. I wonder why the kids are not doing what I taught them when they're young. Maybe you did not sow in them anything. Maybe you just left them to the world to sow in them. This is another, again, a reality that sometimes we miss. I am alienated from it, and I'm assuming that just living with someone will make this person to bear fruits as I wish. Failing to see the real issue, the root cause, possible solution, and personal responsibility. Sometimes a person has his own impression about himself. I am a good person, I am kind-hearted, I love everyone, and my only problem that people do not understand me. Maybe actually I do not understand myself. Maybe I am the true issue here, or the cause of the conflict at home. But again, being alienated from reality. Sometimes everyone sees that this person has a problem, and he is the reason behind the conflict at his home, except himself. I do not see it. It's not me, it's someone else. It is her, him, them, whatever I wanted to call. Repeating the same mistake and expecting a different result. It's again a sign of I am alienated from reality. Because the first definition of sanity is when you do something and you get the results. If you do it again, you get the same results. If you expect to do the same mistake and then you expect a different result, this means that I am alienated from reality. So this is the first device, and most common one, pushing us into a status of alienation from myself, from God, from church, from reality, from family. The second is the war against the will. You know, we have three things that are in control of us: my mind, my thoughts, my feelings, my heart, and my will. So the war against the human will. How? There is a battle in the mind. It's about always seeding in us doubts. Doubts in God's presence and in His goodness and in His control of everything and His promises. Doubting in our minds fears about what is going to happen and how life will look like and what I should be doing in order for me to secure my own life. Focusing on the past and the future. Our minds are always in these two kinds of time frame, the past and future, and ignoring two other time frames that are more important, the present and the eternity. Why the past and the future? Because there we can fantasize. I can fantasize about the past and what went in it and what I could have done to change it. And I can fantasize about the future and what I will do in it while really I'm not planning to do anything that's serious. All of this will make my will very weak because I am in the wrong time. I am not in the present. I'm not planning something for today. Images and fantasies also another war against the mind, the mind of the human being. Seeing images after images after images, this will make me with a will that is so weak. Also the nagging. You remember Delilah? Delilah kept on nagging with Samson. Tell me the secret, tell me the secret. And he left himself to become subject to her nagging until his will failed and he gave up before her. Pressuring at the beginning of any spiritual work. It is very common that whenever we try something for the first time, problems start to come. Very common in confession. People come and say, Abuna, you know, when I tried to pray the Akbiyah for the first time, the day was horrible. The first day of the great fast was the worst day because everything went wrong. And I don't know exactly if I should be continuing doing what you told me or not. It is again the battle against our will to give up, to fail, and to surrender. This is the second and most common war or device that's used by the enemy. The third one is stealing a city by the inch. You know, we know this very well and we are very familiar with, even though we fall into it often. The enemy will never come and propose for you that you go and commit a crime. It will not happen this way. But it can start with this. What about giving yourself absolution from fasting Wednesday and Friday? What's the big deal? Why should God care about this? And start from here. And we give it up. And another thing, why you have to go every week in the church every Sunday? The COVID was there and we used to go every 2 or 3 weeks. Everything was okay. So just continue the pattern. And another inch, another inch, another inch, another inch. And then it's after few, maybe years, I am a different person. My practices, my way of thinking, and my values are all different. All of the beginnings of just once, not a big deal. Don't be a Pharisee. I know my limits. Spirituality is not about these little things. All of these statements is just to steal from you 1 inch at a time. Inch after another, after another, after another. And then we are in this kind of bottomless pit. The fourth device is the common one that you are not the captain of your ship. You have all of the excuses. You have rule. Unfortunately, things are not really under your control. Look here when Saul offered the sacrifice while he was not a priest. And he was confronted by Samuel. Samuel came to him and told, what did you do? Look at the response. He told him, when I saw the people were scattered from me, and that you did not come within the days appointed, and that the Philistines gathered together at Michmash, then I said, the Philistines will now come down on me at Gilgal, and I have not made supplication to the Lord. Therefore, I felt compelled and offered a burnt offering. I am innocent. It's not my mistake. It's not my fault. You know, self-pity is a drug. And this is something that's used often to justify for myself that I am not the captain of my ship. It's out of my control. It's my parents. It's because of something happened to me in the past. It's because of my wife. I married the wrong person. It is because, and then at the end of the day, I am excused. What will happen is nothing is going to change. I will just keep on living in the same issue, the same problem, with no repentance at the end of the day because I am not the captain of my ship. The fifth device, even though I am not the captain of my ship, and I'm convinced with this, and I find excuses for myself, but I am the reference of the truth. Today we live in the world that every person is his own reference for defining what is truthful. It's so scary, by the way. So scary that you define for yourself what is the truth. Sadly, we know now what is happening with the issue of the transgenderism. They say that we should learn from our children when they tell us about whatever they feel about their gender. Where actually it happens in any way that we learn from our children, in a way, anything. They tell us and we have to follow. But the idea about you are the reference of the truth. The Bible instructs us in every occasion against this. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your understanding. Sometimes when you have a discussion about something that's maybe in theology, and you find the person saying an opinion, when you ask him, what is your reference? Where do you bring this from? He will tell you anything or whatever I feel like it makes sense. The truth is not about making sense, because whatever makes sense for you is different than whatever makes sense to your neighbor, to the next person. And God will never judge us in the last day according to what made sense for us. What happened is today, because I have my own reference for the truth, that we create God in our own image. I make God like me. Definitely God is going to do this. Why definitely? Because I think so. Because it makes sense. This is sad, and this is very scary. And again, sadly, we find this is very common, and this is a device that many people today, unfortunately, are embracing. The idea about I ask someone else, and I get his perspective, and I am the disciple to this person, and I trust his judgment. No, it's not really something that we would like to do. The sixth device is, 1 is like 10, the minimum is enough. We all, I think, experience this. I go to confession, and I live few days, I'm doing whatever asked of me, and then I fall in sin. And then my next appointment with Abuna is in maybe 3 weeks. So the temptation comes, you committed sin today, and 1 is like 10. You are going to meet Abuna after 3 weeks. Why not to do the same sin over and over and over and over? Because whenever we meet with Abuna, his absolution will cover everything. 1 is like 10. You know, this device is like what? It's like someone who is trying to put your hand in chains and tell you, if you accepted to be chained with 1, what's the big deal of having 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 10? 1 is like 10. And we know in reality this is not true. Because 1 chain is not like 2, it's not a 3. The more I dig in this hole that I'm standing in, the more effort I will need in order for me to come out. So this is not true. 1 is not like 10. If 1 day is stolen, don't make it 2. If you committed a sin today, it's not going to be the same doing it 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times, because I am moving myself from just falling in sin into being abducted by a habit. And this is totally different. And when it comes to defining what is needed for God's approval, then the minimal is enough. What is the minimum that can get me by? This kind of mindset about when the gospel will be read, or coming to death for like exactly. When I came, the deacon was saying, and glory be to God. With this count that I attended the gospel, I was listening to it in the car. The idea here is about the minimum, anything with the minimum. When we do this is not a spirituality in any way. This is not about being serious in anything. It's about getting by, just like the minimum. And again, this is a device that the enemy convinces us that will be enough, and you gain God's approval with. The seventh one, or the last device to talk about today, is cutting a stem while feeding the roots. Imagine there's a stem that has branches of bad fruits, and you want to get rid of it. So what you do? What you do is, first of all, you try to take it, unroot it, you uproot it from the ground. But sometimes we do this. I cut the stems, but I'm still feeding the roots. I give you example. I remember this one time, this girl, she came and said, Abuna, my fiancé, he told me that he cheated on me. And he said, I am sorry, I'm not going to do it again. Should I believe him? Should I continue? I asked him about what exactly he does usually in his life. She said he has like bad friends, he goes to bad places, and he does not mind whenever he is there. He drinks and get drunk and all of these things. If I asked her, will he change all of these tips? He said to her, no. What I promise you, I'm not going to fall again with another woman. I told him, with all due respect, he's not telling the truth. Because if I'm walking in a certain path, the last step, even if he promises, he cannot keep and maintain. He's still feeding the roots of the bad tree. Sometimes Satan is okay with this. You committed this sin, and I am okay to promise yourself you will never do it again. But all of the steps that led me there, I'm still doing them. No prayers, no commitment to spirituality, no father of confession, nothing. Everything is the same. I go to the same places, I have the same friends. And then at the end of the day, I promise myself I am not going to fall into the final sin. This is again one of the devices of Satan. He wouldn't mind that you're making whatever promises before God, before your father of confession, as far as you are still watering the roots of this bad tree. The last point for today's presentation about the acrasia. And acrasia means the lust of deceit. By the way, the lust of deceit is not deceiving others. It's the lust of being deceived. We have this lust. So sad thing that we want to be deceived for different reasons. And this is the thing. By the way, all of the devices of Satan will never work if I do not fall into the sin of acrasia. If I'm not giving him a place. At the end of the day, if I'm not subject to these kind of devices, if I do not deceive myself, there is no way anyone can make me to fall. No one has authority over us. We have to know this. On the opposite, we are the ones who have authority or granted authority over the enemy. Why we are tempted with this lust? Why we lust to be deceived? One of the reasons is unrighteousness. This is what St. Paul says to the Romans. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Suppressing the truth means what? I want to live in a lie. That's it. Why I want to live in a lie? Because of a life of unrighteousness and ungodliness. I do not want really someone to tell me, okay, what is right, because this will force me to change. You know, most of the atheists, they really do not debate or argue the absence of God because of something related to reason. It's most of the time is because of this, unrighteousness. If God exists, then I have the burden to change. And I do not want this. So the only way is to do what? Is to deceive myself and argue against the presence of God. Because if God is cancelled, God is out, then nothing should change. I am okay. It is all because of a corrupt life, not because of just a corrupt thinking. Unwillingness to change. So I want to believe something and I want to live with it. And this is enough for me. The self-justification, again, a reason why we lust to be deceived. I want to hear that I'm a good person and I'm okay and everything is fine. Sometimes you find a husband or a wife coming to Abuna and saying, Abuna, I have a problem and I want to be your perspective. When Abuna says that you are mistaken, there's something need to change. Many times what happens is what? The person will change Abuna. Why? Because again, I want to be deceived. I am here today, so you tell me that I am okay, I am right, and my partner is the wrong person. I do not really after the truth. I want you to deceive me, but I do not want really to tell you like this. But when you tell me I am wrong, this means أنت مش فاهم. You don't understand, and I need to change you. Suppressing the pain of realizing a certain unpleasant fact about oneself or reality. This is something that again, we do not want to believe. And this is very common, sadly. For many years, I used whenever I give the announcement at the church, so people come and tell me, Abuna, when you say the announcement, you say it in an aggressive way. And this sometimes they scare people. And I deny this 100% for myself. They do not understand. They do not know what they are talking about. But the people were right. They are right. And then when I realized this, it was maybe after years. And by the way, between realization and change, there's something else. Something needs God's grace. But the idea about, if I believe it, this will be painful. Because I will know something about myself that I never thought and I do not want to believe. But if I want really to be saved, to be out from this, I have to again acknowledge that maybe I was deceiving myself. This is that reality. It is painful, but this is the beginning of a change. What are the manifestations of this acrasia, the lust of deceit? Number one is creating and believing a reality to be our own truth. I create something كده and I live in it, which is not the truth, but this is what I believe. This is what I wanted myself to know. It is a very sad thing when this happens, that I live in my own reality. You know what the kids are saying, the La La Land? This is the thing. My own reality, that's like everything looks, I'm good, I am the good person. In this reality, everybody else is a mistaken. Another manifestation is avoiding any word of correction. As I said, look here what the people of Israel wanted to live in Acrasia. Isaiah, when he told them about the reality about themselves, that they are sinners, they need to change. Then they said what? They say to the seers here are the prophets, do not see. And to the prophets, do not prophesy to us right things. Speak to us smooth things. Prophesy deceits. Imagine, prophesy deceits. Tell us what we want to hear. In the book of Revelation, we know that the people who are going to be denied access to the heavenly kingdom are not only people who are lying, but those people who what? Who like lies. There is a difference between making a lie and I like lies. I like to be lied to. Tell me a lie. I do not want to hear the truth. Another manifestation of this acrasia. Busying ourselves with debates and arguments about various religious matters while ignoring the life of devotion and perseverance. Another form of acrasia. We keep debating about the historical Jesus. What about the life of devotion? Away from all of this kind of arguments. One time this person came, he's a funny person, and he come with another person of him, they're friends. Say, Abuna, we have a debate and I want you to answer this for us. If the feast of the Nativity comes on Wednesday, like the coming one is coming on Friday, should we coming on Thursday, the Friday will be a fasting day or not a fasting day? If I said only the day that it comes in will be not fasting, but the second day will be fasting but with no abstinence. If I told them, look, I told you, this is what I said. If I asked them, are you going to fast? They said, no. We just have the discussion. It is for the sake of the argument. The sake of the argument. I won the argument, but at the end of the day, it's not about the devotion or being keen that I want really to observe the fast. Sadly, it's another manifestation of acrasia. People having a lot of theological dialogues, but when it comes to godliness and devotion, there's something on the side. Serving God's house without repentance. It's a sad thing. Repentance is the beginning of any kind of godliness, of godly work. If I'm not repenting, what exactly am I doing? I am serving, so this will make me feel good about myself. This is just something of self-deceit. I will feel or perceive that I'm a good person just because I am a servant under whatever title. Blaming others for our suffering and sense of irritation. It's another form of acrasia. They are responsible. They made me upset. He made me angry. I always repeat this to myself whenever I say, this person pushed my button. This statement says that I have a button. It's not about him. If I don't have a button, no one can push it, and I will not be angry. So it's not his fault. It is me, and the correction starts by acknowledging I have a button. Focusing on others' mistakes and hypocrisies. Very common when people say the people in the church are hypocrites. Are you an exception? You are a different person. You do not want to associate with those kind of sinners. This is acrasia. Because at the end of the day, all of us, we have this kind of hypocrisy one way or another. Rationalizing life and own bad actions and habits. I did because it's not really something that's so wrong. It is okay. According to other churches, what is the big deal about it? All of this rationalization is part of the acrasia and lust of deceit. Favoring information more than reflection and noise over silence and solitude. What happened now when I find myself, I am by myself, no one is talking to me. The right thing is maybe using this time, maybe for a short prayer, maybe reflecting for something, maybe think about something good to do. But usually what happens is we run to our phones. Why we do this? Because I want to be like in a noise. And this noise will keep me from thinking about things that need to change. It's a form of acrasia. Okay, I do not want really to bother thinking. The outcome, or the last thing here is, what will happen is when this acrasia is adopted and embraced. spiritual blindness, continuous disobedience. This is C.S. Lewis. Continuous disobedience to the conscience will make the conscience blind. Even though we know that we grieve the Spirit when the Spirit is trying to tell me I do not want to hear, the conscience will be the same also. I disobey it and I disobey it, then my conscience will be blind and sin will be justified. Gradual separation from God. When we live in acrasia, causing others to suffer, this is very common. We always say that those people make me to suffer. What about us? It's very painful, by the way, that we realize that we cause pain to others. It's a sad thing, and I think we are all, in a way, have something in common about this. Continuation of struggles and life accidents while looking for solution away from oneself. Find the family struggling the same problems over and over and over, and he or she trying to find solution somewhere else. Maybe with another Abuna, another church, another denomination, whatever, while the problem is with me. Postponing the knowledge of the truth to the judgment day. This is the worst thing. I am in self-deceit, and I'm working with it, and day after day after day, until the day when I meet with the Lord, and then I find out the truth. This is horrible if we keep on really living with this kind of lifestyle. I pray that we are all safe from these deceits, and we are not embracing this kind of acrasia, and we are honest to ourselves with the grace of God that's working for us and in us in order to bring us to salvation. And glory be to God forever and ever. Amen.